Hello everyone from me. My name is Galina Danilis. I work for the state government as an advisor for vital services. A bit about the background, the continuity of vital services and defense infrastructure has been my topic for many years, because from 2021, as part of regulating civil crisis, has gone over to the state chancellery. And today I was asked to talk about how our vital service are doing, how continuous they are, and I've been thinking about how to open this topic. And I have gone back to 2014 to see the risk analysis, and I'd see how continuous those vital service providers have been. But perhaps a little bit about the risk environment of today. The risk environment has changed. There's a trend regarding extreme weather conditions, immigration, epidemics, and also the threat of war. And in the background, especially lately, it can be seen that the critical infrastructure, vital services are can be one of the targets. And perhaps this can best be seen with cyber incidents. So this is the statistics from 2021 from State Information Systems and last year's statistics. And we haven't managed to fit in any other statistics, but if we compare those two, then if 2020 we had cyber attacks that were targeted at service interruption of services, then this has increased every year from 10% to 12%. So it's doubled over the last 3 years. And if we're talking about extreme weather condition, I don't really have it here on the slides, but because the storms has been quite active over the last couple of days, then I have said that the first climate change analysis is from 2015, and by 2017 we had a strategy. And at that time, very few companies, especially vital services provider, took it as a serious risk, so that weather would be the thing that would take a lot of their services down. But today we see that it's quite common. If we look closely at vital services, then in 2009 versus 2017, then in 2017 we had a new regulation in the Estonian legislation, a new emergency act. And if we compare 2019, we had many vital services, from electricity to postal services, many institutions organizing, who coordinated and monitoring, but we didn't have a very clear methodological approach how one or the other service qualifies as vital, and we didn't have any specific continuity requirements that companies needed to have in certain types of crisis. And it was unclear for companies how to assess their risks. From 2017, we have had a reform in vital services. We only had 14 services. I will later show you what these services are. And also the companies organizing them was smaller, and we had a clear understanding what companies are vital, how we find them out, how we choose them. And we also had continuity requirements across services. So what service level we expect from companies in case of a risk or a danger, and what kind of preparedness do we expect. And also risk assessment became much more clearer. And vital services in Estonia are basic services that are vital for people's health and safety and companies' functioning. So these are the services without which none of the parties can cope. If one of these services fails, then we are in the, and then the domino effect will kind of collapse. And as I said, now we have 14 of these services. So we're talking about the energy sector, electricity, land, gas, liquid fuels, communications, phone, data. EID is something that's very relevant for Estonians. So everything to do with authentication and digital signatures, roads, water, plumbing, remote heating, cash payment services, and emergency healthcare. So the functioning of hospitals and emergency health services. And what was the situation around 2017? What was the situation with the companies regarding their preparedness? We were highly dependent on data, electricity, and liquid fuels. We still are. It's kind of a known fact. I think many countries have identified the same, that these are the three main services that everyone is dependent on. And that could be this kind of a top three of services. However, what was interesting was that back then, very few vital services provider had generators or batteries or gas supplies or any kind of supplies. You can imagine that very few hospitals back then had a generator. It was kind of a rule rather than an exception. And at that time, if a bigger crisis would have taken place in 2017, then most likely all service would have been down within 12 hours. So this general preparedness of companies was weak. Companies often were not aware of their vulnerabilities. They quite a lot of business processes were optimized to a very thin level. They had disregarded various supplies or supply solutions. It was interesting that very little attention was paid on IT dependency. So those risks, cyber risks, weren't really thought through back then. And there wasn't an overview of their contractual partners, and there was a very narrow overview of risks from your own company's point of view. So they presumed if there was a power outage, then there definitely will be enough generators, and then the Defense League or the Rescue Board will bring you all the necessary fuels or water or generators. So that was the that was the interesting stances back then. But what has changed as of today? We have managed, thanks to the cooperation of many institutions and companies, we've reached the point that we can now actually say that generators in a company, in an infrastructure, is the norm. So autonomic electricity has become a norm. photocopied data, fuel reserves. These are becoming more kind of normal part of supplies, and we have a network of autonomous petrol stations that where you can get access to liquid fuels and sell it without electricity. We also have a crisis petrol station network. I will tell you more about it later. And the risk awareness of companies has gone up, what could be a danger to us, and also the understanding how different services depend on each other, how companies are dependent on other companies. There are interesting solutions from the cooperation of different companies, and there's definitely more thought placed on how to act in different crises. But now some more details regarding electricity. The biggest change is that there's a clearer service restoration and limiting priorities. So if there's a cut in the services, how it will be limited, how it will be restored. Obviously, in the first category, there's imminent threat. This is care homes, hospitals. Second category is all other vital service providers, and etc. So in essence, the first who will remain without electricity is just a household consumer. In other respects, they'll try and keep up important functions. And now the fuels, if in 2017 it was the norm that if there was no electricity, then you wouldn't get access to fuels from a petrol station. Then by today, but the petrol station network is available on the web page. We have an autonomic electric petrol station which all have a generator. We have 100 of petrol stations which have plugs where you can switch a generator to. And in addition, this year we also have a network of crisis petrol stations, whereas per priority only vital vehicles will receive petrol. And we also have a state fuel supply which is deriving from a European Union regulation. It needs to be for 90 days. We used to have less than 50 days, but over the years we have increased the supplies in the territory of Estonia. Regarding communications, there has been progress. The level has and the capabilities have increased to retain communications during power outages. It can be seen here that by 2022, according to the connection network types, it was 16 hours and 6 hours, and now next year when we're talking about base stations, then if this capacity is 2 hours at the moment, then from next year it will be 3 to 6 hours. So these kind of agreements have been reached by the Ministry of Economy and Communication in cooperation with companies, and we've had some changes in national supplies and reserves. Then when we only had a liquid fuel stockpile, then pursuant to European Union directives that the Estonian Supply Center is in charge of, then by now we also have a national food reserve, a healthcare reserve, and they also focus on the three types of supplies and reserves. So in that respect, a lot of changes have been made. And as you can see, this change has been not only on the company's level, but also on the state level. So we have tried from the state side to organize the reserves and the whole concept of how preparedness for a crisis should look like. So we have three or many levels. We have the person themselves, we have the companies, we have the local governments, we have state institution, we have the state. So all these parties, according to our vision, contribute towards a better result. This is it from me. This is a short overview. I remained within my time limits, and I even have a couple of minutes to spare, so we can finish on time. Thank you. Perhaps the question is to do with the map on your slide. Perhaps not. If we move back with the slides to the next one, where we have what kind of reserves are present where. So this one. So with fuel reserves, there's interesting details. So for example, it's more difficult with aviation fuel. We have least reserves there, and then we have the question of how well have we managed to distribute, or are we ready to distribute these reserves, knowing that in the crisis situation, local governments and bigger institutions, hospitals are quite independent, or have to be independent based on their own knowledge. How far are we with this, just based on what you think? If we talk about fuel, then this will be divided pursuant to the retail networks. This is a kind of a principle that has been valid for years, and we are not planning to change. And therefore, we try to empower the petrol station more, because they are the main places where you can get this fuel. The only thing that you can simplify if we're talking about operative vehicles or vital vehicles, then we have a separate network where only they, based on their priority, will receive fuels. Then they don't have to compete with regular consumers. There's a question as well, actually being based on the same thing, how to the surveillance or monitoring of this continuity and this capabilities, because there's also private companies there who are obliged to distribute these reserves. And how will they perform during critical situation? How do you check whether they're able to do that? Yes, we do check that. Each company has their organizing institutions. If we come back to fuels, then it's our climate ministry field, so it's a documented and physical check. So we'll check the documents, we check the risk analysis that the company submits, and once every 2 years we have exercises and trainings, both on a company level and on a ministry level with the companies, where you can go through different crises. Thank you so much, Galina.